Hey guys, had a great question here from Simone, and Simone basically said, so what happens when prices go into free fall? Which is pretty straight and direct, and look, to be fair, they do. Yeah, they do. At a certain time in the market, what we find, and I call it falling off the edge of a cliff. Yeah, and it's not all prices, but certainly there are areas that will fall, and some will fall more than others. And absolutely, that's when we know that recession's hit, or when something's gone wrong, the wheels have fallen off, which does happen. Generally, it happens about every 7 to 10 years. We're overdue one now. I'm predicting mid-2021 when I think we'll probably hit it, only because Trump will keep doing whatever he needs to do to stay in power until November next year, and then he'll probably have another 6 months where grace before the things fall off. So that's my theory. Anyway, that's not the question. The question is, so what do you do? So let me put it to you. There's 3 different aspects. So should you sell your property? If you own an existing property, should you be selling it? Well, the answer is no. Okay. And the reason I say no, all right, and there's a qualifier on that. There may be circumstances, which is if you can't afford to hold it. And remember, generally, it'll be the value that's affected, not the rent. So you should still be able to hold it. If you couldn't afford to hold it before that's happened, you should have been doing things before this hit, okay? So bottom line is, no, you shouldn't sell it. You should hold on, because oftentimes, if you've bought in an area of good fundamentals, a good area, that sort of thing, then actually you might find that the prices drop, but they come back up relatively quickly, okay? And look, 2 years, 6 months to 2 years, depending on where you're at, is a good amount of time. So yes, you're going to be sitting there for 2 years, holding that property. But you know what? Property investment's a long-term thing. And if you're doing it short-term, then it's a totally different strategy. Most people aren't doing it short-term, and they're not set up for those strategies, okay? Because it's expensive to get in and out, in that way. So, should you sell? No, you shouldn't really sell, okay? Now, if you have to sell, then yes. The problem with selling in that type of market is the market's going down. People aren't going to look at what it is now today. They're going to look at what it is in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months and try and predict it. So even though it might say it's worth this much, you might find that you get 20%, 10% less because it's a fire sale, because everyone who has to sell is putting them on the market, and that is the worst market to be selling in, okay? So if you're in that situation, you feel you can't afford to hold these things, get rid of them well before. And I'm telling you, I think 18 months before this happens, so you should be doing something now, whether that be paying down your debt, remortgaging to a cheaper debt, selling off, even though it may not be the best market right now, you should be doing something, okay? So the other side is, okay, so that's if you've owned the properties. Now, the other thing is, if you're in a really crappy area, I hate to say, but when you're in a crappy area, you should be selling it before it becomes a crappy area. Also, you shouldn't really be buying into a crappy area. Now, some people, and a lot of people are buying into crappy areas because they offer high yields, okay? So then the question is, okay, crappy area, higher yields, the yields aren't going to be affected that much by prices dropped. It's only the price. And you're not going to be forced to sell the property because the price drops. And that's one of the key things, yeah? Banks don't repossess properties. In the UK, they do in other countries, okay? They won't do it in Australia. They will do it in Singapore, and various countries around the place. And if you're in the US, then generally you have a non-recourse loan, so you can actually hand it back to the bank, but any equity you've got disappears. So there's different countries have different ways of treating it, all right? But let's talk about the UK just for a sec. So if you're in a crappy area, don't buy there in the first place. If you bought in a crappy area because of the high yield, then you're probably going to keep getting the high yield, in which case hold it, hold on to it for longer. But you might find that in crappy areas, they take longer to come out. I mean, there's properties that I know in the UK now where literally since the last recession, they still haven't recovered, and we're talking 12 years later, okay? And that's because there's no fundamentals, there's no investment, there's no employment, there's no shop, schools, transport links, all that's turning to crap. It's in a continuous degradation. And my point is this: unless if it's unlikely to get money coming in, then you should be getting out, okay? because the fundamentals will just slowly degrade over time, and that is what props up the value. That's what holds up the value and makes a property valuable. Okay, so get rid of it. The other side, if you're on an off-plan property, in other words, you've bought now and now the price has gone down. Okay, so there's a couple of things that and look, so that's a shitty situation, no doubt about it. Okay, so what you're gonna look at is you exchange on the property. If you haven't exchanged, that's fine, you can back out, and you shouldn't have lost too much money. You might have lost some fees and charges and things like that. Okay, but it's probably better to do that and back out. But if you've exchanged, you are legally bound to complete that property at the price that was set. All right, now there's a couple of things. Because the price has dropped, the mortgage that is available to drop, so you got to work out how much extra money you got to put in. And if you got to put in more than you can afford, well, then that's a problem. Okay, so then you got to look at what you can do. And what I recommend you do is you start speaking to the developer, and you start making sure that they know, and you try and get it on with a local agent who can actually sell it off for best price possible, you know, and try and get out of that contract any way possible. Now, it depends on what the contract terms are and that sort of thing. In some cases, you may put a 10% deposit in and you lose a 10% deposit. I tend to stay away from these properties that have, you know, 30, 40, 50% deposits, because you can lose all that deposit, you know. And for me, it's just not, you know, it's too much of a risk, you know. So generally 10, and there might be another 5, 15% is generally what we'll sort of look at maximum. You know, it's a lot more conservative way of doing it, because otherwise you're just funding the developer to build it themselves, so they're not really putting much money in. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So if that happens, you've got to find a way either out of it or find a way to find the cash. Now, if it's in a really good area and you've got good fundamentals, sometimes it may be worth still buying it, because you may find the price drops and then it comes back up. London was certainly like that, you know. And when you talk about central London, the best fundamentals, you know, on the planet, arguably, yeah, very arguably, but yeah, you know, that actually, you know, we sort of had probably 6 months where it was under and then it was back up again. So if you had a sold on the way down, yeah, rather than held for 6 months, where you would have still made money, you know, best fundamentals. And this is where I keep coming back to fundamentals. So that's the other side. The final bit is, if you haven't actually bought a property and looking to buy, well, then what you need to do is negotiate ridiculous offer. In other words, this is the price they're saying, look at it going down and try and pick what it's going to go down to, and then negotiate down to that. And you know, you can get in for some really, because obviously developers, they have to sell these properties, and normally their funding will have, you know, been struggling now, and you know, they're struggling to sell, so they're trying to get rid of these. So you can pick up some absolute bargains. I mean, some of the stuff we picked up, I mean, I know a £210,000 property we picked up for 65,000, you know, and now that property is back up to about 160,000, you know. So, you know, there's some good money to be made in these things if you do it right. But the biggest thing, and forgetting all else, is control your emotions, you know, control your emotions, because actually if you can see the numbers and you can disperse with the emotions and get rid of the negative news and the, you know, whoa, the sky's falling down, and just look at it for what it is, you know, and then plus 10% worse on it, you're probably going to be about right, and you'll probably come out of it feeling pretty good about yourself, because you will have got a good deal. All right, guys, that hopefully that answers the question about what to do when prices fall off the thing. But thanks, Simone, for the question, and I'll chat real soon. Remember, subscribe, questions down the bottom, anything you don't want or don't believe, or you know, comment, and I'll be happy to have a discussion with you about it. All right, guys, see you later. Have a great day. Bye.